Welcome to the Higher View, where we share hot topics and current events from a higher perspective. With your co-hosts, Victoria Reynolds, Kathy Mason, Caroline Chang, Geraldine Orozco, and Goddess Gloria. Now, let's get this show started.
All right, good morning and welcome everyone. What a pleasure it is to be here with you to share, especially on this subject. We hope that you can relate to us and somehow find some clarity on your path through this episode. Today we're talking about the shadow, your dark side, your evil side. Do you have one? Do you know you have one? Or do you see it in politicians and things that are going on in the news? The dark side can be a real blessing when you love and accept your dark side. You complete the love of self, and we can walk through this human experience as a whole being. All right, so as we delve in, I'd like to have each of our hosts today talk about how they found their dark side or when they found their dark side and what it has done for them. And I'll start with my story a little bit. My higher side, what you see right now, is Goddess Gloria. And I love being in my higher self because it's a lot of fun and it's very magical. My evil side is Gorilla Gloria. And I'm not talking about the jungle gorilla, I'm talking about the AK-47 gorilla, the one that shoots and then investigates. And so that side is pretty scary, but I never leave home without my dark side and my higher side. That way I can be whole wherever I go and I always feel safe and protected. I want to start with Goddess Geraldine. She had some great subjects and topics to talk about. And so I'm going to let her tell you all about that. Goddess Geraldine.
Hi, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you everybody for tuning in. How did I find my shadow side? I have been working with that shadow side for a very long time, and I think I've been very aware of that duality since a very early childhood. But I think it wasn't until later years that I began to really meditate, that I began to observe that, observe that shadow side. And there was a point where I didn't really realize how that shadow manifested until I went into meditation to observe those parts of me, how I was presenting myself to the world, how the world was perceiving me, reactions, facial features, facial expressions, things that I would say. So level of training in mindfulness really helped me understand what I was expressing. And one technique that really helped me was mirror work. When I did mirror work, to look in the mirror, to look into my eyes, and to begin to understand any fear that I was deeply, deeply suppressing, that was actually the trigger and root of that shadow side. So that's really where I began to get to know my shadow side, essentially the unknown. It was the doorstep into understanding how to train myself into the world of the unknown, because the shadow is emerging. Of course, the shadow is concealed, so it's not something that we're familiar with. And this is something that's really amazing, that if we teach our children how to become aware of the shadow side, the part of them that feels pain, that feels hurt, that feels fear, essentially, that feels separate from something other, is the part that can be recognized and kind of integrated into a whole. And that's kind of what assisted me in my journey into integrating. So some topics that we wanted to bring to the table today, just as a general, is violence that is occurring in the world. A lot of violence going on, not only with shootings that are happening in the world, but we want to kind of take a look at, the shadow, how the shadow manifests, that essentially when we don't have a handle on that, when we haven't done this kind of shadow work to kind of even just recognize our pain and our suffering and our fear, that manifests in ways that we oftentimes we can't even understand. We can't even see how it manifests. And if we continue to suppress, the more we suppress, the more it actually grows, the more energy and attention flows into that aspect of ourselves. So it'll really represent as a vibrational frequency in resonance to things that we're experiencing externally. And we can create events and experiences where if we don't address it, it kind of explodes into rage, anger, and violence, in which we can act out in ways that we are not thinking the consequence of that. So these are just a couple of topics that we want to talk about today in terms of how to handle that shadow, and hopefully through the discussion get to know how we can integrate. And,
Oh, thank you so much, Goddess Geraldine. What a great insight to your dark side. Let's continue with Goddess Victoria.
Okay. So for me, I started discovering the shadow side maybe after the 2008 recession. That's when I had my big holy shift. What I started to discover is one, I had been living my life with what I call fear-based beliefs. These fear-based beliefs sit dormant until we bring them to the surface and work through them. So this is part of the shadow processing, and what I also call processing your life, which is taking a look at everything, who we have become up to this point, and pulling it all out and like laying it out on the table. It's a buffet of all of the aspects of ourselves. So one of the things I talk about a lot is this idea of disowned aspects, which are parts of ourselves that we're embarrassed about. So we stuff them down and pretend they don't exist. So one of the things I started doing was bringing all of the aspects of myself up to the surface and putting them out for me to look at. And I actually gave them names. And there was an aspect of myself that I called mean mommy. And I think a lot of women might do the same thing. So when my children were really little, if they triggered my stuff, instead of an SH word, if they triggered my stuff from my own childhood, I would lash out at the people I love the very most. And I think a lot of people do that, not even understanding that it is the other people don't make us angry. It's other people's actions triggering something within us that requires our attention. So for me, labeling my aspects really gave me the opportunity to get to know them and to understand them, and to recognize why I'm being triggered. And this is a willingness to bring all of it, all the stuff we've stuffed down, bring it up to the surface and look at it. I know a lot of times with women, when they do lash out at their families, it's because they've been stuffing their emotions for so long. And so let's be willing to take it all out, put it all out on the buffet, give it names and give it labels, so that way we can work with it. And what I ended up doing with Mean Mommy is giving her a new job, which was, Mama Bear. She still needed a place to get out the angst. A way to do that was to protect my kids rather than attacking them. And so, and I've seen that in other aspects of myself. And there is the part of me that would go out in public and I look so fabulous to the public, but I have a bully in my head and she is not nice. And I think that was another way. There was a way of me being able to explain to my kids that we all have an inner bully, and that we tend to treat ourselves so much worse than we would ever treat anybody else. The mean things we say to ourselves, we would never say to another person. So this is part of the shadow side as well. What is that inner voice saying to us? Are we speaking lovingly and kindly to ourselves, or is there a voice inside of us that's beating us up and making us feel even worse about ourselves? And a lot of that is repeating stuff that we were told as a child that we stuffed down and assumed was real, but it's really a false story about who we are. So that's kind of where I want to start with, is understanding that a lot of this stems from fear-based beliefs and how they manifest in our lives as we're older, and having the willingness to bring it all up to the surface and see where the suffering exists within ourselves. Because people who are hurting hurt other people, and people who are loving love other people. So it's a willingness to look at our own shit, right?
I love that. Thank you, Goddess Victoria. And now we go to Goddess Kathy. I love how we each have topics and we're going to get to each one of those. So Goddess Kathy, do you have a name for your evil side, and where did you find her?
Okay, so I have to tell you that this is part of, at least part of my ascension journey, because this past maybe 2 weeks, shadow work has shown up for me and a bunch of my friends. So I think this is such a good subject to talk about right now, because the heaviness and the lack of integration is really going to affect how we elevate the world. So I want to start with that. And Goddess Glory, I did a reading for me, and I'm still, I have to do all my homework. So don't give me a bad grade, teach. But but I'm still working on all of this. What I wanted to tell you is that I thought I had integrated a lot of this. This is what the big surprise was with working with Goddess Gloria, is that I thought, I mean, I've been doing this work for over 20 years. And what I wanted to share for people is the energetic waste that you are doing within your consciousness by resisting who you really are and not integrating all of it is amazing. If you can integrate, like what Goddess Gloria offers, and what I think Geraldine also offers this, and Victoria's work is very similar in integration and releasing fear. What happens is that potential integration can free up all this energy for you to be the creative being that you are. The That's what I wanted everyone to know from my journey. I have seen so many times where I was afraid, or I was wearing a costume almost, because I was role playing. I ran a division Arthur Anderson. I had 80 employees under me. I was this psychic intuitive being in this big corporate environment. I had to put on a little costume for work every day. But they must have known. That's what you have to understand. You think you're hiding those aspects of yourself. You think you're hiding your shame or your secrets or all of that, but it is apparent to others. It may be an incongruency with your vibration where you just don't seem like you're being honest, or it may show up some other way. But if you can just look at these aspects, we build up all these like a jail cell for ourselves that we can't bust through the bars. But if you just go through it, you'll see, even if you cry, you only cry for a very short while and then you're free. So we're talking about a whole different way of being. You're out of judgment of yourself and others, because a lot of the judgments you have of others is of you, not them. It's a projection. So that's what I wanted to say is, hey guys, this is freedom. This is your ticket to freedom, and it is a joyous ride. But I have to also say that I'm still doing it like 20 years, over 20 years, because there's still aspects to clean up. So it's not a one shot. Oh, I took that class. Oh, I did that one thing. It seems like it's a way of being, right?
Right. And that's why you have to do your homework, Goddess
Oh,
Kathy. I'll make sure and get the book out to you. I wrote this book so that just in case I die, all the secrets are in here. And
great.
one of the things that I focus on in this book is finding your dark side, like really not just finding it, but seeing yourself, especially in all of the dark things going on in our society. You know, sometimes we get so mad at some politicians and it makes us our evil side, even though we don't voice it, we get these evil thoughts where we want to consider taking action or doing something. And even though we might not ever do those things, the people around us feel that energy. And the good thing about all this energy is that you have total control over it. You know, I moved into an apartment building, and one of the neighbors introduced himself and he says, "Hi, I'm an asshole." And I was so relieved to know that he knows he's an asshole. And I don't mind people like that because we're all the same. What scares me is the people that have no idea they're assholes. And you can always see them coming because they suppress and they suppress and they don't stand up for themselves and they don't speak out. And every 6 to 9 months, something will trigger them and they explode. And this used to be me too, by the way. I would explode and then I would always justify my behavior, my actions, or my words by saying, well, if you hadn't spoken to me like that, I wouldn't have behaved like that. Or if you hadn't done that, it's because of you. And it's now through my book and through the work that I do, we turn it always back to us. If you're pointing the finger at somebody, anybody, if you're blaming people that you don't know or people that you know, you always have to remember there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. Everyone's a mirror for us. And so on that, we'll continue with Goddess Geraldine.
Thank you. Yeah, I think one of the important things about shadow work is that, no matter actually people, what I discover through my work working one-on-one is that it's funny, the people that have reached the deepest depths of fear and anxiety and anger and separation are the ones that have the ability of reaching the highest levels as well. And it's really a powerful thing. We tend to think that our shadow, the things that we have done in our lives, the things that we're not proud about, we have shame, we have a lot of guilt. And these emotions that are underlying are all rooted, go root down to fear. All of these negative emotions have a root in fear. And we kind of live in this dualistic, three-dimensional, holographic human experience, where we have many experiences, many potential available opportunities to observe and to choose and to navigate this duality. So one of the ways that I found that is really powerful is that when we begin to observe ourselves through mindfulness, through our everyday and through our week, at what are some of the patterns that trigger us, that would be the core root to begin. And as you begin to observe the things that trigger you, you begin to notice where parts of you are in protection, survival mode, and where parts of you have been hurt, have been in pain, which result in survival mode in order to protect. To begin to work with these parts and to acknowledge and to get to the core of those parts that have been hurt, that have been fearful, that believe in this illusion of separation, because separation is very much an illusion. And as Goddess Gloria was saying, that when we point at someone, we're also pointing at ourselves. We are such integrated mirrors that we actually don't encounter experiences that are not in resonance with us. So this holographic system functions from the inside out. Whatever we are suppressing deep within us is exactly what is going to present itself externally. And there's an entire mechanism to this, that whatever we suppress becomes a point of reference that we continue to move back and forward from. And it grows and we nourish and nourish and nourish it until it literally becomes our personality. And our personality essentially is a survival mechanism. So personalities are always survival mechanisms. They are built and created and designed from the womb until now, until you grow up to be an adult. And everything that you've experienced in your life is based on the first primal perceptions of life and your existence, whether you're safe, whether you're unsafe, whether you're loved or perception of not loved. All of those until the age of 7 are the core roots that begin to create foundations of programs. So what we're doing in this kind of shadow work is beginning to understand the triggers that are at surface level that help us find those wounded children or wounded parts of us that have not been acknowledged, that didn't know how to navigate an unknown situation that was perceived as separation. So this is where we can begin to help nurture that inner child and address and teach the child how to access other perspectives that are not filtered by separation. Moving from separation into unity consciousness is the journey of integration. It's the journey of becoming one with one another. And therefore, less and less we act out because we become mindful of the cause and effect factor, not only of our own internal dialogue, but of the way that we're expressing externally. So this really becomes, now we become a mature, responsible spiritual being that is now aware at how we navigate this world is co-creating and also potentially counter-creating. So these are just some ideas in how we are navigating. But when we look at the amount of violence that there is today, a lot of children are acting out violently because there's a lot of neglect. There's a lot of lack of connection, nurturing, attention, protection. So these are things that we have to reparent ourselves. And we can discuss a lot about that. But essentially, everyone that is acting out in this violence is behaving like the abandoned child that has not been acknowledged, that has not been loved. So these are the things that we have to start to look at. And potentially, my hope and my dream for our society as we move and evolve is that we begin to create programs that support these wounded children that act out in violent acts that harm essentially communities, families at large, and to kind of rehabilitate the way that we see the shadow in a way that is a nourishment and a potential for growth.
I love that. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Goddess Geraldine. You know, I wanted just to mention in the new edition of my book, I just published the second edition. I put an emergency section in the back. So if you feel inclined to use your words where it might do damage for you or for others, or if you feel inclined to act in a way that you know later you'll regret, come to the book. There's a coloring page, and then there's some questions that will guide you back to your higher self. The first question is, what is my part in this? Because after all, this whole entire human experience is an illusion that we are creating with our thoughts and with what's in our heart. The second question is, what can I do different? It's always a choice. The third question is, why did I create this experience? If this is all an illusion and I'm creating, maybe that will give me the answers I'm looking for. And the last question to answer is, who do I choose to be? Do I choose going in this experience if I feel attacked or offended? Do I choose to react from my Goddess Gloria perspective where I'm loving and compassionate? And sometimes it's not enough. Or do I choose to respond from Guerrilla Gloria? And either way is okay. Where both are a facet of our higher selves, which is our God self, our goddess selves. All right, let's continue with Goddess Victoria. I know you had some good topics you wanted to cover. You're muted.
Thank you. My house is a little noisy, so I'm keeping it muted while I'm here. So I was thinking of pondering more on what Geraldine was saying and about healing the hurt child. And it's really important to understand that even though someone might look like they're 50 or 60 years old, the part of them that is hurting that still needs healing is that child aspect of them. So they've been going through their entire life with unresolved issues from their childhood. You know, maybe it's someone who's incredibly arrogant. Well, he's probably still trying to meet daddy's expectations from when he was 2 years old. Or, you know, we have adults that are lashing out and not understanding that it's still the hurt child inside of them that is wanting to be healed. And I'm being reminded, you know, as the spiritual teacher that I am, I do bring up Yeshua quite a bit because he's the teacher that I'm most aligned with, where he said, love your enemies and pray for those who spitefully use you. Well, part of this is one, loving that, learning how to love that enemy within ourselves, and who is, you know, it's like the aspects of ourselves that are very unkind to ourselves and also to those around us. How can we learn to love those aspects of ourselves and really desire for our painful stories, our hurt child to be healed. And then remember that wanting that same thing for everyone else in the world. We are co-creating this reality. For all those people that are complaining about all the horrible politicians up there and all the people who are doing really hurtful, unkind, violent acts toward humanity, understand we co-created this. We have shadows within ourselves, and there's also these shadows that exist within the collective consciousness. So if we want to change the shadows that exist within our collective consciousness, it begins with first a willingness to do the healing work within ourselves. One of the things I talk about is that when we come home to that loving resonance within ourselves, we have the ability to self-govern. We actually don't need governments and politicians or any of that. When we come home to the loving within ourselves, and we are then able to govern ourselves from a heart of love and compassion. And we got to do that work on ourselves first. We can't change the world unless we're willing to do it within ourselves first. So there are a lot of people like, oh, I came here to change the world, but they're not willing to do their own inner work. And everything that exists in our outer reality is a reflection of what exists within our own inner self. And this all comes down to being able, really desiring and loving ourselves enough to hold that hurt child within ourselves. So one of the practices I ended up doing when I was going through a really deep reparenting, as I was parenting my own children, and again, as Geraldine was saying, this reparenting, I was reparenting myself, and I would sit and hold myself the same way that I would hold my children and cry it out. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And love myself with the same unconditional love that I love my children, with that same pure, forgiving love that I have for my own children. This is a really, really important part of healing our own suffering. And recognizing that there's nothing wrong with being angry sometimes. There's nothing wrong with feeling guilty or ashamed, because once you bring those beliefs of how wrong we are up to the surface, then we can heal that and learn how to love all of it. And then all those negative aspects start to calm down. That personality self. So I refer to this as the higher self and the personality self, where the higher self is always connected to pure, absolute divine bliss. And the personality self is navigating what it is to be a human being on this incredibly complex game of earth that we're playing. And really be able to sit with the personality self and look from a higher perspective. What about this within me needs to be resolved? What about this is trying to get my attention? Because everything that exists is trying to get our attention. And what is it that I can learn from this? Earth is a learning planet. We came here for the purpose of learning. What is it that I can learn from this so that I can be more and more and more of my loving self, and less of my personality self, to be more fearless in this reality where fear is so prevalent? And if each one of us are willing to really sit with that and be okay with pulling up all of the dark shadows, and we might have a negative thought. I've had one, a few years back where it's like, well, maybe somebody will die and I'll get their inheritance. And then I said, oh, well, that's not a very nice thing to think, but it's there. And there are people I see in the Awake and Aware community who just can't wait to see people hang for their crimes. That's a shadow as well. What is that within you that is so angry and so resentful and so judgmental that you wish harm on another human being? Can we find it within ourselves to wish healing on ourselves and every other human being? And it all starts within ourselves, our willingness to look at our own stuff and learn how to love it all. And as the other ladies have been talking about, learning how to integrate the shadow. and saying, I see why you exist. There's something here you're trying to teach me. You're trying to teach me how to become a better person. We can't see the light without the shadow. So that's why it exists. And that is, part of the reason we call this the blessing of the shadow, because the shadow actually does serve the light.
I love that. Wow. You just took us on a journey, and I love myself. Um, I wanted to just touch on one of the things that you said about the people who sin against us, to pray for them. And I have to say, my life really changed about 6 years ago when I started praying, especially for my ex that I felt so wronged by. I had been carrying resentments for so many years, and even though I wasn't verbally speaking them, everybody around me felt them. And one day it dawned on me, whenever I thought of him, this bad energy would come up, and I knew that it was coming back to me. So I thought, let me pray for him. And so I just want to share this prayer with you, so that if you have somebody that makes you go to that dark side, maybe this prayer will help. So I pray for them to be happy, healthy, prosperous. I pray for them so that they feel loved and that they're enjoying the beauty of this human experience. At the beginning, that prayer was difficult to say, but it's gotten easier and easier. And now, anytime I feel the slightest bit of energy coming from somebody, I start praying for them in that prayer. All right, let's continue as God is Kathy. She had some great points she wanted to go over.
So, first of all, I wanted to also add to Geraldine talking about wounded children, because I got to be a host for a friend of mine just published a book called Personal Heart Power. And there was somebody on that event last night that was talking about that she is a teacher for special needs children. And I didn't get the age group, but it sounded like they were maybe 8 years old, something like that, 7, 8 years old. And she was saying, what do I do? Because I'm getting triggered. I'm getting triggered. And then it just amplifies if she doesn't change the frequency, they pick up on it, and it expands. And what they were talking about is a recentering, breathing, using mindfulness practices, which I know Geraldine teaches. There are ways for us to use tools like what's in Goddess Gloria's book or other books that allow us to get back to center when we're feeling this, so we can actually process it. The other thing I wanted to say, so mindfulness is very important. It's breathing techniques, it's stillness, it's getting back to the center point, 0 point that they call it, where you have fear and love on two opposites, and you can actually process what's in your field and make much better choices. And you can do it in an instant. It's not like, oh no, I have to go to the bathroom and and sit there for 15 minutes and hide while I'm doing it. You can just do it right on a dime. And that's a very valuable tool for all of us right now, because we're in this time of change on purpose. We stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now, to be part of this tremendous opportunity for humanity to actually ascend in body, maybe for the first time ever in the history of humans anywhere in the galaxy. And what it means is that there aren't any veils anymore. We're creating our own hologram of reality. And right now we're creating a unified hologram of reality with our panel, so we can co-create. And that's the opportunity. But for us to go to the next step and be telepathic and be loving contributors, we have to clean up our stuff. Because can you imagine being telepathic if you still got a lot of your shadow work to do, where you don't have any control of your triggers? And that's what we're in right now. That's what you're seeing. And you're also seeing the energy is getting stronger and stronger, and it's going to be a path for people that are ready to. It's big work. That as I spoke with somebody yesterday who's done a ton of work, but she was in bed sick last week with it. So the energies, it's ascension flu, you guys. It's a way for your body to say, this doesn't fit in my new frequency. I got to purge it out. I've got to get rid of it. And that can be through sinuses. It can be all different ways. But I'm actually grateful for it. I'm grateful for this work in order to see what the choices I have. And I also wanted to share that my personal life vision is to help as many people as possible wake up to their divinity. And your divinity includes it all. So when we reject and we judge and we distance ourselves, we're not being part of the fractal of God that we are. Your divinity allows you to co-create with the universe at a very high level. That's why we're here. Consciousness it replicated itself into fractals so that it could expand and learn. So when you look at that higher view, you might have a different viewpoint about what's all happening here and what your role is in it. And if you see it, what you're supposed to do with it, or if you're supposed to do anything with it, you can just be the observer of it and go, what was that for me? But shadow work is I don't think you can escape it now. That's all I was trying to say. And don't be afraid of it. Honestly, the awareness may cause some tears, like going back to your inner child and experiencing being slapped by your parent and reliving that trauma. But once you experience it, it's transmuted. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox. But anyway, I do think we're all divine pieces of God, and this is part of our journey in this blessed time that we're in, and the opportunities to make a better world is through this path.
I love it. Wow. I like your soapbox, Goddess Kathy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was like, well, it makes me taller.
Yes, it does. That is so wonderful. I love our panel and how we're all going towards the same goals and we all do the same kind of work. And so I wanted to touch a little bit about how do you know that you need to heal your inner child? It's very easy. If you are feeling resentments or anger or vengeance for anybody in your life, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's someone close to you, someone from your past, or the person at the checkout at Target, especially if it's a stranger that triggers you to either say something or respond in a negative way, that's where you got to take a step back and look at yourself in the mirror. And so I can tell you for myself, I was in a court case and a lawyer stood up and he yelled at me in my face. And all I could think about was, am I that much of an asshole? And I didn't even get mad at him because we're all the same. And now that I could see him as the same as me, we have love and compassion, right? One of the things that I want each of the panel members, these goddesses, these powerful goddesses to share is how do you help people with their dark side? What classes do you offer, workshops, websites? I just recently republished my book, Life Shift Session. I put it in a book, but I also do sessions one-on-one and in group. On February 21st, I begin doing the healing meditations every Tuesday on Zoom. And in the late March, we have a book club. Also in June or July, if I'm still alive, we're going to do a Life Shift Session Academy. And that's a 9-week academy. So thank you so much, and I'll hand it off to Goddess Victoria.
Thank you so much, Goddess Gloria. For me, okay, I have a book called Transcending Fear, and Kathy Mason is publishing it for me, and she promises me she's going to have it out soon. It is actually a second edition of a book I wrote back in 2012. That was the process that I was given to process my own life. And I teach it to others. I call it the transcendence process. And it's all about transcending our fear-based beliefs and really getting deep down and understanding how the judgments and the resentment that we have toward other people are actually judgments that we have about ourselves, and our own unresolved issues and our own unrecognized fear-based beliefs, and how to process that, how to work through it. In my particular case, my beliefs all came from my parents' very fundamentalist childhood religion, that I was fed all of these really what I call fear disguised as love beliefs. And so I really primarily help people who have come from very fundamentalist religions and who are ready to step out of those fear-based beliefs and come home to the divine loving within themselves and reestablish a connection to the divine rather than experience the separation that our religiosities have put on people. I also do personal sessions. I have classes coming up this year. I have a lot of public speaking events, so I'm not going to be doing as much teaching. However, I might have some Zoom classes and some workshops mixed up between the traveling. It's been one of my dreams for years to be a traveling teacher, and I started that last year, and I'm doing more of it this year. And obviously doing these shows. I have my YouTube channel that I do a lot of teaching on, and I'm on a couple of other channels where I do spiritual teaching. So I'm always here, and I'm readily available to help people process their fear-based beliefs so that we can all rise up into a higher consciousness, not only within ourselves, but the whole of humanity. And we're here to lead the way for others. Nobody ascends alone. We're all in it together. And that's why we chose to incarnate now. So the whole party gets to go to the next level as we finish up this level of the game. And I can be found at victoriareynolds.com.
Oh, I love that. I love being in this game with you. So much joy, so much fun. Thank you for sharing, Goddess Victoria. Let's continue with Goddess Kathy. What do you have for us?
Well, I am an undercover spiritual teacher because I do it through helping people launch their conscious business or their books or their healing practice or their training, their concepts out in the world. And I've been doing it. This is my 23rd year of doing it. And what my process is I actually do soul illumination readings and healings where I reconnect you to your soul. And actually, your soul shows me a movie, a full color movie of what it chose to be doing during this incarnation. And it actually shows us and gives us energy in order to land it into 3D. And so that is partially what I do. I am working on some books, but they're more marketing books. But I also do Conscious Business Zone. This is my 4th year, just starting my 4th year of doing Conscious Business Zone twice a week, where I bring servant leaders, conscious businesses, and servant leaders. And a servant leader is someone who takes care of their employees and their customers instead of just taking care of themselves. Our Conscious Business Zone profiles beautiful resources for those people to build their business and to build their life in a better way. That's about all. I'm also part of IONS, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and part of Co-Creators Convergence. Those are 2 of my big nonprofits that I work with. And that's about all. I don't have a specific course for this. I'm doing the work behind the scenes, helping people get their work out in the world.
And you sure are doing a lot of work. My goodness, you just made me tired with everything you're doing.
I love it. It's not really work.
What a gift to us you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One of the things I forgot to mention, I also do stand-up comedy, and I have a show coming up February 8th. That's on a Wednesday evening in the city of Culver City if you're in the area. And then I also have a show March 18th, which will be live streamed. And
Cool.
with that, let's take it to Goddess Geraldine.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, to close the comment, today we use the yin and yang symbol on our image, and it's really important to talk about what that is because essentially the yin and yang is the black and the white. And how do we enter the 0 point that we were talking about earlier is non-judgment. This is really important key when it comes to working with the shadow, that what you discover after looking at your own shadow, and of course you are very easily seeing the shadows of the world and the reflections of those things, is that the non-judgment and observing things as cause and effect is actually the key to being liberated from the biochemical, bioelectrical reactions that we have stored as a result of trauma. So trauma is very much a biochemical, bioelectrical response system in the body. And because we are holographically interconnected with this universe and with this world around us, we access these triggers through our everyday life. So in order to neutralize that trigger point, we have to come into a state of non-judgment where we don't judge our reactions, our shadow, but see it as a range of frequency that makes up. Remember that we are a spectrum of rainbow that is refracted by the infinite consciousness that is source, which is all potential experiences, everything from light to the deepest darkness. So all of that is within us, and we need to learn how to enter the 0 point of non-judgment in which we're able to observe everything from that neutrality to understand that it is all cause and effect. If there is a cause, there's an effect. And it's just endless cycles of this that the universe chooses to express itself in this cyclical pattern that we have encoded within us. So one of the things that I focus on in a week, I host Self-Love Sundays, and we go very deep into these shadow aspects in something called epigenetic psychotherapy, where I focus on DNA reprogramming, taking a look at the programs that have been created by that shadow aspect, by the suffering and pain, and simply reprogramming it. And this is very much through vibrational frequency and working in this holographic field. I also work in hypnotherapy as a clinical hypnotherapist. So begin to look at the very core root belief systems, because all of this shadow is embedded in the subconscious mind. That is actually what's outputting into the system of creation. So this is where we go in and work with that information. I have a very active YouTube channel that you can check out, and also courses, primarily three courses that are multidimensional body, get to know your body, how does this biochemical system work, why do you respond the way you do, how is even your biome participating in the way that you see shadow, feel about yourself, and creating impulses for the way that you respond to things, your hormonal system. And also multidimensional awareness. What's yours and what's not yours? What do you need to react to and what do you not need to react to? I created an acronym called GPAC, grounding, protecting, aligning, co-creating, and you can learn how to navigate yourself in this multidimensional realm. And of course, the essence of that is all rooted in unconditional self-love. So how do you love yourself? Looking at all of these things that can be occurring around you, that is at the core of this information. So I can be found at GeraldineOrozco.com, and you can subscribe to me at Geraldine Orozco on YouTube. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Goddess Geraldine. You give us such an insight. And I love that you asked that question. How do you love yourself? And as we close out this fantastic hour, let's each take a turn and share with everyone how we love ourselves. I know for myself, I've totally changed my life, my schedule to wrap it around loving myself first every single day. Every day before I become of service to the collective conscious, I make sure that I give to myself. I meditate, I eat or and drink something that's going to nourish my body instead of deplete it. And I do some form. This morning I did my yoga. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. And it's my morning ritual. I do all of these things before I'm of service to anyone so that I can be full. There are some times where I don't get to do my self-love care. And those are the days that I give out warnings to people. You probably don't want to be around me. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Goddess Kathy.
That's perfect. Have a warning sign across your front of your shirt. I do something similar every morning. I do meditation, and I take a lot of classes. I love the idea of learning all different ways to connect to higher source and to get clear messages. So I take a lot of classes. It's another thing. And I do watch my diet. And I think really, I had a spiritually transformative experience. And every morning when I wake up, I remember it and I process it. And because of all of the work that these classes that I've taken, my insights are different year after year after year. So I encourage everyone to create a morning routine like Goddess Glory was talking about, and to put yourself at the top of the food chain. Even if you're a mom and you've got all these responsibilities, you know, they said if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. That's the truth. So really give yourself the gift. The other thing that Geraldine mentioned is mirror work. And it's surprising how simple and fast that can be as well. Sometimes if I need extra, I'll do that as well in the morning. So that's all I know.
All right. Thank you so much, Goddess Kathy. And let's go with Goddess Victoria. What do you do for your self-care?
So I still have a house full, and I started on my self-care when my children were really young, and that was getting myself up in the morning before everybody else. It's the only time of the day that I could carve out for myself. And I discovered that this was the best gift I could possibly give my family, was to give myself the gift of time. So I still get up in the morning before anybody else. I make myself a cup of tea. I light candles in my house, and I sit in my form of meditation, which is tuning in. I tune into spirit and connect with the divine, and really get anchored in this beautiful, loving space before I start my day, before everybody else gets up. And this is a gift that I give to myself. When my children were really young, I would actually get up and go for a walk every morning before everybody got up, because it was the only time of the day that I had for myself. And so if you're a parent with small children, it is not easy to make that shift, but boy, once you do, it is amazing how much better your life is when you carve out at least a half hour for yourself in the morning before everybody else. I know some people do that at night after everyone else goes to sleep, but that didn't work for me because well, my house was always noisy, even late at night. So I had to do it first thing in the morning. And I still do. It is the way that I start my day. If I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is check social media or get on the computer, it just ruins my entire day. So, and then sometimes just listening. Sometimes I'll be at my desk and I'll ask myself what's next. And sometimes it is go outside and pull some weeds, go step in the grass, go for a walk on the beach. But it's really important that we listen to the loving voice within us, that it's always reminding us how to love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, we have more than enough to give to anyone else. It's that my cup is full and overflowing, and I give to others from the overflow. So it's really important we fill ourselves up first.
Thank you so much, Goddess Victoria. And last but not least, she's going to close our show out by telling us how she loves herself. Before we do that, I just want to give a big hug to our producer who's in the background, Goddess Rachel is making all of this magnificent visual effects happen. I don't know if she'll show herself today or another day, but she just looks divine. And so, Goddess Geraldine, how do you love yourself?
Thank you so much. Yes, the way I love myself are primarily looking at mindfulness, being super mindful and aware, observing myself, my emotions, my reactions, my intentions, and coming into absolute authenticity. Absolute authenticity in order to reach truth. Truth is what's closest to nature. So as long as I align myself with nature by the cycles of regeneration, constant life and death, and know that everything is a constant life and death, ebb and flow. For me, that is the most powerful way to enter into that 0 point, where from there emerges an unconditional love that is incredibly potent, that I can see all things as a part of myself, trying to dissolve the illusion of separation into unity. So this is primarily what my self-love routine has now come to. And of course, it's rooted with deep meditation in the morning, yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, to work with those energies. Working with energy and life force allows you to feel through the body, through the senses, how to cultivate energy and the life force that you are. So this is part of my routine, and it is really useful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful collection of energy, love, and light. I hope that you felt it on the other side. We got some great messages. Thank you for those of you who hung out with us for today. And even if you're watching this after it's replayed, we appreciate you. Reach out to us. We are here for you. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time on The Higher View.